Hello, welcome back to another talk on 5G. Something clicked with me this week, an aha moment, basically a massive confirmation moment. I was watching this video about the merging of Verizon and the New York Times, and I was watching a presentation by Mark Thompson, the CEO of New York Times. And it began to click in a big way why the New York Times had been coming up with this story that somehow potential harmful effects of this new technology was somehow some Russian story. I just thought that it was so sad and pathetic, that sort of narrative that seems to be used a lot. I also noticed that in the media now there are commentators, certainly in our media in New Zealand, many commentators from the industry who are being very defensive and coming up with articles basically denying that the possibility of damage to organic tissue by 5G, but using arguments that they were used 3 or 4 years ago. And it suggests to me that they're worried because the arguments are trite. And I see this whole thing now like a big cult, and I've said that before, cult, C-U-L-T, where there is what we call confirmation bias. And what has happened in the religions, of course, is that it's about belief. And science came along to question these beliefs through diligence and study. And the scientific process has within it a process of trying to lessen confirmation bias. It hasn't been particularly good at this, as all the editors of the medical journals, international medical journals, will attest to. The fact that so many medical papers, medical scientific papers, have been written by those with commercial interests, vested interests and conflicts of interest, only goes to show that. But it is in fact an aim of pure science to come up with facts that are reproducible. And despite the fact that it's not a perfect system, it is there to counteract beliefs and cult-like behaviour. And just because the movement to 5G is so big, it doesn't mean it's not cult-like. Some years ago, about 10 years ago, I wrote a book called Human Hologram. And in essence, this gave some sort of basis, scientific basis, to the proposition and the hypothesis that our universe and our bodies are holographic, but also that our senses convert another reality into this reality. So this 3D, 4D reality could well be a virtual reality. But I also hypothesized that behind this is a field of consciousness, that within the field of consciousness there's a benign connectivity. One could call it love, some could call it God. Tom Campbell would call it the larger consciousness system. That within this system there is room for benevolence and love, and that is what I proposed. So I was saying, although this is in some ways could well be a virtual reality, the connections that we have, the loving connections that we have, the practical connections we have, can be based on morals and ethics and love. During this talk by Mark Thompson, he made it clear that this merging of the New York Times with Verizon was something that was going to happen with pretty well every news outlet, particularly mainstream news outlet. We know that they are now very few companies in control of this. And the way he's selling it is that this is going to be marvellous because there's no lag time, that it's almost like this can be produced instantly in 3D, initially with goggles, but obviously without some stage. Then their narrative, the news, can become not only instant, but a reality, a virtual reality. But it is a virtual reality they are in control of. And this worries me greatly, because looking at his presentation, it sent shudders through me, having studied psychopathy for a number of reasons over the last 4 years. In fact, it is so blatant, the lies in this, that one gets concerned how many people have already been mind controlled and bought into this. So what is being proposed is that they will present to us a version of what is happening in this world. And it can be stage managed. And they can be in control of it. And it would appear to be, from these people, these men, that their focus is power and control and profit. And I've already said in a few videos ago how we in this life try to fill a void, an emptiness within us. And I suggest that that emptiness can only be filled by a certain number of things. That's love, compassion, music, creativity, and meaning, the sort of things we talk about at funerals. But this brave new world, this 1984 that is far in excess of George Orwell's vision, will be to create a reality for the masses that they are not in control of. It can be stage managed. George Orwell said in 1984, if you can control the past, you can control the future. News, interesting enough, is always slightly in the past. If we could control that narrative, and that narrative is indistinguishable for many people from another truth, we're in serious trouble. This is about the creation of a matrix, very much like the Matrix movie, where in my book I was talking about a loving, living, interconnected, universal matrix based on consciousness, not greed or fear. Now, of course, what happens in the commercial world is one or two will form these liaisons with these technical companies, but very quickly all will do it. And therefore, every news item run by these people will be biased towards this. This is why we're not hearing in our mainstream news, in our trusted news outlets, any talk about how this possibly could be dangerous. Of course, it's going to be dangerous on many levels. I've already said the frightening mind control that we're talking about, let alone the impact of non-ionizing radiation. So this is why the media are quiet about this, because this could, if it gets out, this is dangerous, this could stymie them. But it is getting out. And if you look at these articles that are written with industry bias, and look at the comments section, you will see now an overwhelming number of comments, not being extremists, not being what would be referred to as tin hat extremists. They're coming from reasonable, educated minds. And so we're at very much a critical point now, where the future that lies ahead is going to be a future of loving small communities, or a large community controlled by very powerful people who we now know are lying from the outset. Cheerio. Let's sort this out. We can do it. Bye.